Alliance for Better Communities.
All right, guys, I know it's getting late and I know we won't have time for questions, so I will go a little bit, I'll do my best to go as quickly as I can. So we are the Alliance for Better Communities. We're the Jefferson County Anti-Drug Coalition, and our vision, we just changed it so I can read it, is to have a healthy and safe community for all, and our mission is to reduce underage drinking, substance abuse, and address any emerging threats. So what are we here for? We're here to raise awareness about the intersections of opioid addiction and sex trafficking. That's a little sensitive. So, you know, our wheelhouse is prevention of addiction and underage substance use. So how is that related to sex trafficking? It's completely off the mark. You have no idea what you're talking about. Bringing those two things together. Well, we were misinformed. The way we came into this topic is we had members of our family and recovery group, which is kind of the steering committee for the coalition, come to us and say, you know, this is a big problem, sex trafficking and opioid addiction. That we were being told how people in Jefferson County were that maybe they had some previous drug charges and they were arrested and were in jail, and then when they came out they weren't quite ready to enter into recovery, so they were looking for ways to consume drugs, and they were somehow linked up with traffickers, and those traffickers were to coerce them into prostitution or commercial sex acts is what we call it, in order to receive their drugs. So we wanted to find out more about this topic because we realized that this was definitely in our wheelhouse. We are a prevention coalition, whether we're preventing substance use or sex trafficking or any human trafficking for that matter. So we dug a little deeper into it, and what we found out was this huge connection between drugs and sex trafficking. And what we found out was that it's not that it's not those people who are addicted to drugs and need to find a way to access their drugs are being linked to sex traffickers. It's traffickers are seeking out vulnerable people, usually youth, and grooming them, and through this process getting them addicted to drugs, and then exploiting them for commercial sex acts and their financial gain, and then eventually somehow either they end up being rescued, hopefully, and then they're left with this terrible lifelong addiction if they don't find a substantial support system to help their recovery. So the definition of human trafficking is a commercial sex act that is induced by force, fraud, or coercion. However, when you are 18 and under, or until you're 18 years old, you cannot consent. So therefore, any person engaging in a commercial sex act under the age of 18 is being trafficked. Or when we're not talking about sex trafficking, when we talk about labor trafficking, we're talking about the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining a person for labor services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. There's a difference between smuggling and trafficking. Smuggling involves an illegal border crossing. Trafficking, you don't even have to leave your own home to be trafficked. We know of many children who are trafficked in their home by their parents or guardians. So we just wanted to go over why, because with everything we do, we have to show that it is something that we should be talking about and a mantle we should take up. So why is this important? Because it happens here. It happens in this country, it happens in this state, it happens in this county, it happens in this community, and I'm so glad that Deputy Mangino shared her story about the young boy who moved to Oregon, because a lot of people don't think that it happens in rural communities, but as a matter of fact, it's more likely to happen in a rural community because traffickers seek out victims they seek out easy targets. And traffickers are very smart people, so they know where their easy targets are. They know the kids that aren't going to be missed. They know that in rural communities, people may not notice what's going on. Trafficking is the third largest illegal industry in the world behind weapons and drugs. So there again, you see that connection between drugs and trafficking. They really do go hand in hand. Approximately 600 to 800,000 people are trafficked annually worldwide, and 200,000 children are trafficked in the U.S. every year. So it's definitely something that we need to look at, because as a prevention organization, our goal is to keep our kids safe, keep our community safe, keep our community healthy. So we wanted to find out why it happens. It happens because traffickers have really great recruitment tactics. But there are things we can do about that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. They prey on vulnerable populations. They are patient people. They do math. They know. They get on a spreadsheet and they say, if this person can make me this much money in this many years, then I can spend this much money on the grooming process. It is slow, it is intentional, and the reason why it's that slow and intentional is because traffickers understand the power of a trauma bond or Stockholm syndrome. They know that they can manipulate this person in such a way that they will see them as the only person that can help them and protect them, while at the same time this person is exploiting them. Our long-term goals, well, take a look. So what should I know? And we're going to talk about the long-term goals here. You should know that victims or survivors of human trafficking require very specialized care because of their trauma bonds. They're under assault from all fronts: their dignity, their rights, their autonomy, their physical, social, emotional impacts. They have all been affected, but still that trauma bond is so strong to that trafficker that it's critically important that people, when they go into rescue victims of trafficking, that they understand that a lot of times victims don't want to be rescued. It takes a long time and it's a slow process to get them out of this lifestyle. And it's important to remain mindful that victimization is a strong possibility, because it's just their trauma and their situation are so delicate. It's so touch and go for a lot of years after being traumatized that it's easy for them to slip back into trafficking. Prevention is key. Just like drugs and trafficking go hand in hand, preventing youth substance abuse or substance use in youth trafficking through reducing the youth vulnerabilities go hand in hand also. So how do we do this? We want to keep our youth engaged in their communities. We want to teach them how to be leaders and to help them develop their leadership skills. We want to increase their participation in youth prevention programs such as Love 146. Love 146 is an anti-trafficking organization that operates in the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Philippines. And their mission is the abolishment of child trafficking and human slavery, and modern day slavery, nothing less. They have a great prevention program called Not a Number that teaches kids not just how to protect themselves against potential traffickers, but it helps them to build their resilience and reduce their vulnerabilities. So teaching kids that their vulnerabilities are really there and what they are, and it's okay to seek help for them. Also, we have a prevention curriculum for parents called Closing the Gap, which helps caregivers identify their children's vulnerabilities, and it provides insights on how trafficking occurs and what they can do about it. We also have to discourage the stigma and support the advocates who are working to create a justice system that sees trafficking survivors as survivors, not prostitutes, not criminals, not people participating in illegal activities. So there are tons of barriers for providers and survivors. Providers don't have a lot of knowledge about human trafficking. You know what you know, and if you're never taught anything, you can't learn it. So it's important that providers seek out training, how to provide this specialized care. We have to understand who traffickers are and what they look like. They do not look like they do not look like the pimp Halloween costume. They do not have big, fluffy purple robes and big hats and walk with an oversized cane. They look like you, they look like me, they look like doctors, they look like grandmothers, they look like business owners, they look like firefighters, they look like soldiers, they look like pastors, they look like everybody else. Traffickers play a lot of mind games with their victim. Many trafficked individuals don't even recognize or refuse to acknowledge that they're victims. So understanding that you may be talking to somebody who is a trafficking victim and they won't acknowledge it and they don't even know it is real. That's why it's so important to pay attention to the signs and red flags of what trafficking is. 88% of victims have at least one contact with the medical profession per year, but they are often unidentified. So, again, it's important for everybody to really hone in on your interactions with individuals and get out of your phones and actually look at the person that you're talking to. Have a conversation with that person, or just watch their body language so that you, even if you think they might be trafficked, you can get them some support and help. So I just wanted to put this up here just for anybody who might be a physician other than Dr. Gregg, because I know she's working really hard on this topic, an EMS, a dentist. We interface with trafficking victims on a daily basis and we don't even know it. Victims are in plain sight. You could encounter a victim at the mall, you can encounter them at school, you can encounter them at the emergency room department. They may or may not have legal immigration status. However, I will say that the majority of people who are labor trafficked in the United States are actually legally here. And what happens is their trafficker takes possession of their passport and their documentation, and says, this is mine until you work off this debt that they can never work off. They're often given false promises about their employment or their wages. Traffickers prey on vulnerable people, and I can't stress this enough, because the one thing that can really help prevent this crisis and this from happening is reducing vulnerability, filling those gaps. So I just want to read two quotes from actual traffickers from a report based on interviews from 25 former traffickers, where Myers-Powell said, "I'd like to get my best girls from another state and bring them back to where they knew no one and I was their only friend and focus." And this one from Ken Ivey, who goes by Pimpin' Ken, is the most heartbreaking but rings the most true to me. "A pimp looks for that weakness that he uses those weaknesses to his advantage. They begin to see you as their champion, even if the weakness you rescue them from is the one you created." So they really, again, prey on those vulnerabilities. They will build you up. They will make you feel like they're the only person you can trust, and then they will tear you down and manipulate you and abuse you. Recognizing the signs of trafficking can really save a life. Through our training with Love 146, we've heard that the average shelf life for a traffic victim is 7 years. In Syracuse, there was one that was rescued. She had been on her own, I think, for about a year or so, and she was doing really well, and then her trafficker found her and beat her to death Another trafficking survivor was doing really well. They actually got her enrolled in school, and because she became drug addicted through her trafficker, she overdosed and lost her life that way. So these are real people in our area who are losing their lives to this awful situation and circumstance that could have been prevented. I just want to briefly go over the signs. There are some signs here, but notable changes in attire and appearance without an explainable source of income. If you have a friend or know somebody who all of a sudden, was wearing the same shirt 2 days a week and then walks in with a brand new $100 outfit every day, or new nails every week, or their hair done, every other week, something's going on there, and they don't have a job, something's going on there. It's important to alert an adult or get into contact with somebody that may be able to help them. Inconsistent stories or contradictory personal information. So if you get a new student and they say there's 14 one day and 15 the next, and they say they came from San Francisco yesterday and tomorrow they're going to tell you they came from El Paso, then there's something going on there. Signs of physical abuse, some of the obvious ones: physical abuse or sexual abuse, bruises, cuts, burns, submissiveness, jumpiness. Traffickers will let their victims go to school. They will let their victims work in other places because they don't need, it's not like you think in your mind where these victims are locked in basements, which does happen, and we see that on the news, and that's very highly sensationalized. But these victims are so psychologically bound to their traffickers that they can have a relatively long leash, so to speak, and still come home to their trafficker. Appears to feel fearful, anxious, depressed, avoids eye contact is a big one, suffers from substance abuse problems, an array of psychological disorders, sexually transmitted diseases, chronic illnesses, carries multiple hotel cards, lots of money, sharp objects, a sudden presence of an older boyfriend, or tattoos with the name on it that it's not their own, or other tattoos that they're reluctant to share. Last summer I was staying at a hotel. I was visiting some family, and I noticed that there was a woman there in the middle of the night, because we got back from a play late, and she had this tattoo on her neck that was of a male's name, and it caught my eye, and I just made a mental note of it. And then I went out there, and she was sitting in that same car very early the next morning with her tattoo on her neck, waiting. And then a young woman came out dressed in a midriff shirt and mini skirt. So you have to know what's out there. Love 146, their website, love146.org, is a great resource. If you go to learn, it's up on the top, and learn's closer to the right hand side. There's a lot of good resources there. And I would really encourage you to read some of the stories about some of these individuals that are in survivor care, where one girl said that they lived in a place where they lived in a street community, and kids, the adults in the community believed that penetration was okay at 6 years old, and so at 7 she was trafficked and she contracted an STD, and it took her a long time to find an adult that said, this isn't right, and help her get out and get support. And a local resource, the Victims Assistance Center. We are Safe Harbor County, so we have the Child Advocacy Center, and we have a Safe Harbor team that can receive reports of trafficking and really help support that victim. I hate to call them victims, they're survivors, but for legal purposes, this is just what the terminology we have to use. And you can contact me. I am right now, I'm currently the only person who's certified to provide the Love 146 Not a Number prevention training for youth. And then myself and Kylie Hillier are both certified to do the Closing the Gap training for parents and caregivers, which if you're a parent or caregiver, I highly recommend this training, because this is not just about trafficking, this is about communicating with your youth and understanding them better through this very tough time called adolescence.